Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Hotel Dropouts. Today I am joined by Benny and Dan. Say hi.
Hi.
Hello. Oh, so
and
let
to,
me try that again because we did it at the same time. Hello, this is my voice. My name is Benny. You can relate this voice to this name, Benny.
Hello, this is Dan. This is my voice. You can relate you can relate this voice to me.
what you imagine like in the future, like if any of you are missing, I could just have like an AI bot to stand in and then just clone your voice. If you always
Are we
speak
at that
like
level yet?
you can, technically you can. Like in Taiwan, there's already scams where people collect data on your parents' voice and then they
My
all
God, 2 seconds in when we're already tangenting
yeah, okay, let's
towards AI.
yeah, let's
We wanted to talk about something else, but
yeah,
I think
let's
we're hard
pivot.
tangling to AI again.
Yeah, pivot. Okay, today we will be talking about ontology, the study of existence, the study of meaning, right? And ontology is often confused with epistemology. If I would explain this, ontology is the study of what is, and epistemology is the study of, okay, well, how do you prove that? So an ontologist would say, a chair exists. An epistemologist would say, how do you prove that, right? So we're not going to delve too much into epistemology, not going to talk about proofing, but we will be talking about what is the meaning of existence, what constitutes a thing, what composes of a thing, and see how that affects our real day-to-day life. Interestingly, we will be so like just as an intro, like you could imagine, yeah, ontology sounds very philosophical, sounds like a meaningless debate. But in real life, there are some very important applications, right? How you define something is important in medicine, for example. Clinicians use SNOMED, which is an acronym for like the clinical language they use, so that you can be treated in America, and maybe later down the line they can continue your treatment in Romania because they all use the same definitions and so on. You can see this. Uh, you can see this making a very big difference in terms of legality, accounting, and excitingly, sociology. Right? We're going to be talking about what is a woman, uh, and space exploration. Like, how do you prove humanity to? How do you explain humanity to aliens, so to speak? Okay, you guys ready for this?
I
Um,
am. Bring it on.
I I I'm just woke up. I'm just woken up like 30 minutes ago. Okay.
Oh,
Wait, I
okay.
have two knee-jerk reactions.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it what is a woman? Why is not what is a human? Gender neutral?
Mm-hmm.
And my barbarian brain, barbar. Uh, when I heard the word epistemology, I was like, the study of pissing.
I just, that's, oh my God. Okay. Uh,
Sorry. All right. Yes. I
yeah.
just wanted to confide that.
I mean, it's you've already touched on this before when we talked about the ship of Theseus, which we will go in depth to talk about. So
Yeah, but that was a private conversation.
oh, that's
I
true.
don't think
Yes.
we spoke about that. Yeah. So I think I mentioned it in the last
Mm-hmm.
podcast about how if you want to hear these conversations, then maybe subscribe to the Patreon, and then maybe we should actually record them and put it on the Patreon as well. But like that's a different topic. But yeah, just as a recap. Oh, and a shout out. We do have a Patreon. We are on Spotify. You didn't mention that, did you, Jamie? Or am I having a brain fart
At
moment?
this point, it's like the marketing. We just put it in the end.
Oh, okay. Well, we will put that again
Mm.
in the end, but just to remind you that we have those. Uh, and I'll start tensioning so Jamie can take
Okay.
over and do the rest of the
I mean,
intro.
this whole discussion is based on Vsauce's video. I think you've all watched it. Like, what is a chair, right? So let's talk about this. What do you think is a chair? What is a chair? If you look in this room, in your room, you see a chair. How do you define it? What defines its existence? Is the chair the construction, the structure of all these wooden pillars that are then assembled that becomes a chair, or is it the fundamental particles that composes of this chair, or is it that the chair is both the composition and its constitution, which are the arrangement, and in addition, a labeling we give it that, oh, because this particular construction and because of how it's comprised of all these atoms, it now serves a function that we call chair. So that chair is actually two things. What are your thoughts? Like, what do you think a chair is?
So I'm the barbarian. I think the actual professional actually making furniture should
Mhm.
add his input first before I give my barbarian answer.
What? No, I don't view it that way, but if I must go first, I think the most important, I mean, like the core thing that defines a chair is the label. Like
Mhm.
it's a chair because we called it a chair. Uh,
Mhm.
Mhm. I,
But
I would like to disagree with you on that point, but please proceed.
do not disagree. I am the professional here. No, I'm joking.
Benny, keep it.
Uh,
Okay.
yeah, go ahead, Brennan.
No, no. Have you said all you wish to say about regarding this topic?
Well, when Jamie was describing all the possible definitions of a chair, I was like, each time he would give a new description, I was like, oh yeah, 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 that's it. And then he gives a new one. I was like, oh yeah, no, actually that one is a better one. So, but in the end, I thought that a chair can be a virtual one. It can be
Mhm.
drawn on a paper. It could be an actual chair that we're used to, the thing you can actually sit on.
Mhm.
But it could look like a very typical chair. It could look very weird, but it could still be a chair. Something surprising, abstract art or something like that, right?
Mhm.
So I thought to myself that in the end, that a chair is a label that we give it, and then this label, it kind of if you say something is a chair, then you're giving the information to the second person that you believe this thing is representing like a tool for you to rest on, basically, right?
Yeah.
And it could be anything, even a stump in the woods. If you can call it a chair.
Yeah. Benny, what do you
Then you
think?
can call it a table.
Fair. So, for any of you who played Dungeons and Dragons, you know barbarians are not intellectual, but
Mhm.
they are wise. So
Ah.
here is my wise barbarian shamanic take on this. Er, er. If I sits, then is chair. If I
Aha.
sits, then is chair. If man is on ground and I sit on man, then man is chair. If big rock there and I sit on big rock, then big rock is chair.
Aha.
But does a function define a thing? I can sit on a rail. Does that make the rail a chair? I can sit on a table. Does that make that table a chair? I mean, the whole fact of labeling something and the whole it all comes down to communication, right? The transfer of information or an
Mhm.
idea from one entity to another. So when we think about chair as itself as well, it's actually a family of terms, right? Because they even under the umbrella term of chair, there's different kinds of chair. You have sofa chair, you have reclining chair, you have a rocking chair, and those are just three examples of the many others that I cannot skim from the top of my head right now.
So,
So what
mm,
makes a chair a chair?
yeah.
Let me ask you a question. Does it matter?
Well, it matters in the sense that we're trying to define it.
Yeah, but if you cannot determine something as a thing or under the family of something just purely on its functions, but if you can consider it one just
Mhm.
because of how you determine you use it, even though it has a variety of other functions, then in a sense, Dan's logic kind of makes sense
Hmm.
where even if something is not a chair, and if you use it as one, from your perspective, it's a
It
chair.
is a chair. This is all very interesting because you guys are actually touching on a lot of the concepts that we will be talking about later. So let me just first mention these concepts that you have touched on inadvertently, and come back to clarify the idea that, wait, do you still acknowledge that a chair, in addition to its function, does its composition, what it's made of, and does its constitution of how it's arranged have any part to play in what defines as a chair? Right. So, first of all, you talked about how the framework of human language, basically, this is a chair as far as humans are concerned, because we're trying to communicate with each other. This is that the existence of a chair is contingent on our language, right? Like that's something that you've brought up. Then that begs a very interesting question where, if humanity stops to exist, does that mean the concept of chair, does that mean the existence of chair ceases to exist? If we go into a future of apocalyptic wasteland, there are no humans left, but animals are still there, and you see vines growing around this chair. If you can pull yourself back to the third person, you're basically God. And then you you know that humans don't exist, but does that mean that chair no longer exists, that it is no longer a chair because it's contingent on humanity? And how does that
I have a tangent thought.
yeah, but how, and
I'm
how does
sorry to
that
interrupt.
okay, wait, hang on. Okay. And how does
Yeah.
that relate to if you are to create like a little artifact to communicate humanity, which back in the 2000s NASA tried to do, where we use pictures and we create like this little disc, which is an artifact that seeks to communicate to any potential intelligent species that oh, humanity exists. We have math, we have engineering, we have history, we have evolution, and so on. And this artifact is made with the intention of not for human consumption. Does that mean this artifact does not exist? In fact, that does not exist. And a second point that you guys have touched on, which is very interesting, is if we could label anything insofar as for human consumption, we could label, if this is a chair, if I deem this is a chair, pragmatically I could sit on it, so it is a chair, then it introduces a problem that philosophers call the problem of the many. That if I have a checklist for you to count uh, all the things that are in a universe, a chair can count as a chair, but if I put a teacup on top of it, it now also counts as a desk, right? And then we introduce the problem of the many when one object, depending on the context, can then serve to be something else. And you can see how that introduces a problem in terms of defining something. We can't have two equal one, right? So, Benny, would you like you
Mm,
said you had a retort you'd like to move on to?
yes, actually,
Mhm.
regarding your first point and your second point, regarding the
Mm.
chair being more than just a chair. Yes, you are right. Now imagine you have a standard wooden 0815 like typical chair, right? If you
Mhm.
think chair, dinner table chair, you think of that one.
Yeah.
You mentioned putting something on it and now it's a desk. Well, I'll up you one. I hang my clothes on it. Now it's a wardrobe. I
Mm.
dump all my clothes, all my dirty pile of clothes without even folding it up on it. Now it's a wäschekorb. It's a laundry basket.
Mhm.
Problem of the many, right?
Exactly.
And then for your first point, I think I look at Dan's profile picture and I think cat. We zoom out. Not even you don't even need to wait until the death of the extinction of humankind. Look at the fucking cat. Oh, pardon my language.
Mhm.
Look at the cat, right? You buy such a freaking expensive, super comfortable bed for the cat where you intend for the cat to sleep in, but you get the order online and there's a carton box. Where does the cat go to? In the fucking carton box and sleeps in there instead of the freaking super comfortable bed that you bought for it.
Mhm.
Fucking cat. But I think that answers the question of if we are gone, the cats would just sleep wherever they want to. They wouldn't sleep on the defined area of cat bed. If they find it and they like it and they sleep in it, that's their prerogative. But there is still cats that would say, I like this paper thing more than I like that bed.
Well, but the question is there still a chair?
It exists in its own form, even if it's not used as intended by its creator.
But it
And
exists.
art, there is a statement. Does the art, after being made, still belong to the artist, or does it belong to the person who perceives it?
Aha, interesting. Yes. Wow, you guys are touching on a lot of things, but let me start introducing some terminologies because you've touched on a lot. So, Benny's point
Touch a
on
lot.
so Benny's point on, hey, if a chair that is now has a teacup on it can be defined as a table, that then you hang clothing on top, it could be a rack. That is what the philosophers would describe as an ontological universalism, meaning anything is a thing. Any combination is a thing, right? Uh, my You might say that, hey, my bottle that now has a plastic wrapping around it, uh, combined with Bernard's pencil somewhere else. Even though they're not together, you could even argue that that is a thing. Or maybe you
My
say, or
barbarian brain
maybe,
just
by
got
the
an
way, this is
idea.
all open ended discussion that we're not really debating. We're introducing all the different ideas, right? Because Benny touched on ontological universalism. Any combination of anything could be a thing. Then that begs the
Mm.
question: are there strict rules about this? Because it seems like if I have a multi-use tool, that could be a rack, could be a table, that could also be a chair, but it's all in one place. So I could ascribe it many names. It could in that one space, many things could exist. But can my bottle on the table and the Eiffel Tower and St. Petersburg combined together, can we call that something else? Is there a rule out there that says, okay, well, they need to be related, they need to be connected somehow to be a thing, right? And on the opposite end of this view, like of how Benny talked about the first point of uh, well, I don't know if you actually did, but the universal nihilism, which is an acknowledgement of saying, hey, nothing really exists. Everything is down to its fundamental particles. For now, we only know up to quarks and strings, if you believe in string theory, and potentially fields, right? Nothing really exists. It's just atoms are arranged chair-wise, right? Atoms arranged Benny-wise, right? The name we give on top of it is a label that then Dan takes that further and argue that label is contingent on human use or language or context, that it needs to exist within a framework. So that's very interesting, right? So before we delve, because we could go both ways, right? But right now we're going to go down the nihilistic view, uh, where we deem things exist because of their composition, because of what they're made of, because of the atoms arranged chairwise. So that now that gets interesting because we need to talk about this ship of Theseus, right? Benny, can you
I want to
explain the ship of
wait, wait,
Theseus?
wait. I want to say a few
Mm,
things, but I
mm,
also don't want to just us both to hijack the conversation.
mm.
Dan, do you have anything to add as of now, which you would like to add?
uh, well, I keep coming back to and holding on to my
Mm,
idea that basically it's all
mm,
for me. It's all still spinning around a label
mm.
because a label can have strict rules. It can be very vague. So physical objects on their own. mm,
Interesting, huh?
just exist in the world,
Hmm.
and we give them meaning by using them, and we pass on that meaning to others. And so in our group, if somebody puts a cup on a cushioned chair, we would all think, oh no, and that someone would call it a table. We would all think, no, no, that's not a table. It's not suited well for that
You're
because
just a
it's
fool.
soft. Yeah, you're just a fool. And And I think they would be right because it's what the society decides something is, which gives it meaning, and then uh, all of a sudden maybe there is a different nation that was isolated for a long time, and for
Hmm.
some whatever reason all their tables are cushioned, and for them it makes perfect sense that it's a table. So yeah, it's I
Actually,
I I
mm,
I kind of clinged on my idea of labels, and so far it's not letting me go that
I mean,
that
so let's
easily.
clarify like our position, right? So Dan,
Wait. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sure.
but don't worry, like this is a very like circular discussion. I'm sure we're gonna get back to like there's a lot to talk about. So eventually, yeah, the minutia we're gonna get to it. So Dan, your position is that a chair is what we label it, insofar as is it contingent on humanity? Do they cease being a chair if humans are gone? Like, what is your position on this?
Uh, I guess in a sense, yes. If there's no way
Mm-hmm.
to find out that for some being this was a certain object,
Even
uh,
intelligent alien species.
the concept of chairs dies if there
Uh-huh.
are no species that need to sit on in the universe left.
Interesting. Okay. So hold on to that. So that was basically you're subscribing to like a branch of ontological universalism, in particular that you see the linguistic tie to what exists and what doesn't. Benny, what would you say is your position?
One moment. I just want to say, regarding your during the second half of our conversation,
Mm-hmm.
on the first point of your second half about, yeah, but if an object of many, nowadays you can use a object in your own way as many different functions regarding, like, now it's a dirty laundry basket. Now it's the chair is now a cloth hanger. The chair is now a
Mm-hmm.
table. The chair is now a chair. To that, and regarding Paris and St. Petersburg, my friend, you're not looking at simple solution. You just need to put word multi-purpose to item. This
Mm-hmm.
multi-purpose chair can do many things. Fits the term, does everything. The city multi-purpose city fits the term, does everything. What thing? Doesn't matter. It's multi-purpose. Simple solution. If it's and then the thing can be a tool. Yeah, you understand. Multi-purpose tool can do many things and is a tool. The city is the concept of a city is a city. Ah, I understand now. City can do multi-people purpose things. It's a multi-purpose city. Simple solution. And
But
then I don't
we
remember the
we are
second
veering away.
part.
But the main argument isn't about like the utility of it, right? Like the ultimately, what is your position on whether it exists or not? Like it could, yes, it could be used as many things. We're not really contending that, right? Or we're contending.
Wait. Yeah. I just remembered the
Ah,
second part.
ah.
The second part you mentioned nihilism, and it's just arranged atoms in a way,
Mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm,
Um, uh, you know that and a drop of ink in water diffuses because it's spreading out,
yeah.
but it's all the pattern of this ink movement. It's random, so there could be a chance in like a super duper billion gazillion chance that it all reconverges into a drop of ink again, or it reconvert these ink particles reconverges into an actual Jamie, even though the probability of that is super low. It's not zero. um, so it's a little bit also about randomness, I guess, right?
Uh,
Because what are the chances complicated life form exists in a cold, dead universe that just so happens to be in a Goldilocks zone of temperature that allows life to exist in this huge, unforgiving, uncaring reality, not just universe, but reality, or our perception of reality, right?
well, I mean,
Uh,
but that has to do with but you're talking about like the potent are you talking about like the potential possibility of a replica of you assuming an infinitely extending universe where where
Yeah,
you move on to a point where particles will be rearranged to be like a slight variation of you.
yeah, an exact copy of me, but a slight variation that I made of candy.
Yeah,
It's
that's super
possible.
interesting, but that it has to do with like that goes on to like the units of Googleplex and how we talk about the multiverse theory where we investigate like the different forms of how infinity could exist. But coming back to like
Wait,
what
wait.
is a chair?
I have a request first. Can you name this episode like 42, the answer to life, universe, and everything, or something like that?
I mean,
Like
okay,
make it
well,
a fun title, please. Don't just call it epistology or the
I was thinking,
whatever
oh, we're
the
just gonna
term
name this episode as "What is a Woman" because that's gonna be the most controversial part.
or
But
clickbaity.
but
Actually, yes, you're
but
right.
Benny, like to emphasize on your point, I don't want
Ah,
to. I
so that's why you said it that way in the
Yeah,
beginning.
yeah,
You
I
were
don't want
setting it
to.
up to be a clickbaity.
Okay, but just on your point, we're not going to too tangential on this. But if you don't subscribe to multiverse theory, if you ascribe to the current science where we believe in entropy, then an ink that is dissipating in a body of water will never revert back to its pre-entropy form unless intervened, right? So energy coagulates and then energy dissipates. That is the natural
Yeah,
order
but
of
second law of thermodynamics, all forms of energy goes towards in the eventual end of entropy, right?
exactly. So where in that entropy could they rearrange, right? If I put you into a black hole, you've been spaghettified. There's no outcome where
In-
you reassemble
Unless
unless there is a multitude of parallel universes where that arrangement of atoms could happen.
unless I get sucked into another black hole as a spaghetti,
Okay.
and then I make somehow my way into the core of it, which super
Mm.
compresses my spaghetti into me again. But then it won't be me. Now I'm a diamond.
Aha. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, yes, ship of Theseus, we're coming. But can you clarify, like, what do you just pick a side? Like, we're not really debating. We're just,
No, no,
choosing.
no.
We're
I'm
just
not picking any
yeah.
sides.
So
I'm on my side. That's it.
in
I have
terms
my
of
thoughts,
in terms of how a
and it
chair
goes
exists,
everywhere.
like, do you believe a chair? Do you follow Dan in terms of universalism? It's what we give its meaning. The constitution and the composition is irrelevant, or do you think the arrangement of atoms chairwise and the atoms themselves are important to, or like, or these things make the chair? What is
I
your
think they're
position?
all valid, but flexible because
Hmm.
while the chair exists, even without our concept of it being a chair existing anymore, the chair now turns into a thing in an environment which that thing is placed in, which would then, with the eventual heat death of the universe, first the sun burns it up, and then its structural form of a chair breaks down into ash, and then at some point it's just ashes and dust.
So you agree with Dan in the sense that in lieu of if humanity is not present, then that thing is not by definition a chair. That thing does not exist. The word chair does not exist.
I didn't say that. But if another life form, say a
Mm-hmm.
cat, sits on them, that then sits on that chair, or sleeps on that chair,
Mm-hmm.
or some maybe extraterrestrial life comes down and see a thing
Mm-hmm.
there and sits on it, is it not still a chair technically?
Yeah. I mean, this is
I have a
the
question.
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, our question is, I was trying to hold it in my head, but I think it's like falling apart. Our question is, what is to exist, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the question, if we turn that question towards a chair, what it means for a chair to exist, right?
Yeah.
I guess it for a chair to exist, it has to have us to call it a chair.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. I would even say that uh, the object exists still, right? The molecules that form an object, they exist whether we exist or whether we know about their existence, whether we gave it a name or a label or anything, but they still exist. What we do is we kind of draw a selection box around an assembly of molecules and
Mhm.
label it.
Correct, yeah.
Uh, and that label is almost like an entity of itself
Mm.
that stores the information that is relevant to us, that helps us understand the world around us better.
It kind
Ah,
of feels like you give it existence by labeling it something.
that's very
Yes,
interesting.
I would say that the object itself exists. A label is our attachment that brings more information for ourselves uh, that can disappear if we disappear, but the assembly of atoms can still exist even if some magician snaps his fingers and all the humanity disappears.
Uh-huh.
The assembly of molecules still exists, but the concept of chair, if it's not written down somewhere, I guess disappears as well, until it's possible that in the future another species that also needs to sit down will invent a concept that will probably be
Mhm.
very, very similar.
So your position is that even without the humanity's existence, the atoms arranged chair-wise, that version of the chair still exists.
It's not a version of a chair. It's just like I'm not sure even why I mentioned this, but like I just wanted to mention that I think
Mhm.
the atoms exist whether we give them a name or not. But like without humans, there's no one to label it a chair. Then like the concept of chair dies.
But that is
Yeah.
irrelevant in the case of, in the sense that we are arguing its existence. Like you can argue for a thing's existence with or without human beings.
Um, I don't quite understand that. Can
Like
you
the chair
rephrase it?
can exist even without our existence
Yeah,
in
The
its
what
physical
exists?
form.
that like, the chair can, like, so the question, like, the debate here, right, is, does the chair exist? Is it still a chair even without humans, even without people to give it a label? Does it exist?
Uh,
Whether we
for
call
us
it like
as
whether.
like if we imagine if we're looking at a chair through a portal in a world where there are no more humans, for
Mhm,
us we can tell it's a chair, but it's because of this magical connection to that time, right? We discuss
mhm,
this object in a world that where there are no more humans, so because we exist and we discussed the subject, we can give it a label chair, and the
mhm,
label chair exists. But when humans are gone, and there will be and I don't know, and aliens didn't record our knowledge, or like there's no way for another species to find out about the chair,
mhm.
then I guess it doesn't exist
Okay,
anymore.
interesting. Okay, yeah. So the
Because
whole idea.
because if we were even gone and the chair is still standing there,
Yeah,
we can name it a chair because we're talking about it from a point in time where we exist.
yeah.
So that's why we can give it a name. And we could even probably, if we could look at a world in the past, we could probably find before humans existed,
Mhm.
we could probably find an object that would look like a chair, and we call it, "Huh, funny. That thing is like a chair."
So
It could have been a chair if people would be around.
can I poke a hole in your concept?
Yeah,
So cats stop existing after we are gone because we are no longer there to consider them, label them as cats.
the concept of a cat,
Yeah.
yes.
So
The
they,
concept of a cat carries some connection to us, right?
yeah.
A cat is a animal, a pet, But the life form still exists. It's just that,
Like it's unidentified.
mm, well, yeah, I guess so.
It's not
So
I'm
being
the
observed.
chair, the structural, the atom structure that constitutes a chair still exists. It's just no longer identified as a chair.
Yeah, yeah.
So you would acknowledge, like,
So does it still exist or does it not exist?
Does what?
So does it still exist or does it not exist?
The object, the molecules exist. It's just that there's no one to label it a chair. So I would say the concept of chair is dead.
but it exists. The object, like the
What?
concept is fine, like the in terms of our framework. But would you say, without us to describe it, without us to observe it, there used to be a chair. Now humanity is wiped out, like nothing is left, but the chair stands there. Without humans to label it, does the chair still exist? Is it still a chair?
Uh,
Like,
I
would you
would
say
say
like the
no.
structure is there, but the labeling of chair is not?
I would say then it doesn't exist.
Ah, interesting. Okay,
So
hold on to that, because we're gonna like dive very deep into all of this, and interestingly enough, like in addition to chairs, there are a multitude of other things where its existence is very very special, right? Uh,
yeah,
Broadly speaking, a guy would, if you're very particular, if you're like a scientist, you're very particular about what a chair is, then you would say, hey, the labeling is part of it. You would say the concept is tied to our language, so our language is part of what makes chair exist. But uh, no matter what it's made of, in other words, the composition doesn't matter, but the arrangement has to meet certain requirements for it to be observed as a chair. Um, but if you look at something like a conceptual object, let's say a triangle, right? A triangle, three vertices, three edges that must meet. Its composition are three vertices. If you take one vertex away, it stops being a triangle. Its constitution, so its arrangement, if you take away one edge, the three vertices still exist. But let's say like you move the edges away such that they're not connected, then it stops being a triangle, right? So there are things that can survive the sort of structural check and composition checks. So we'll keep going back to constitution and composition, right? Take, for instance, a paper crane, right? A paper crane that is, you would say it's composed of, if you're a nihilist, you would say it's composed of all the atoms that constitute the paper. So the paper and the crane, whether it's folded or not, are effectively the same thing. Um, but the paper crane cannot survive the constitution check. If you unfold it, it stops being a paper crane. But the paper itself, you can mess with it however you want. It is simply made of atoms and paper that eventually becomes paper, right? So that is the main point of contention, where we've so many different kinds of things, where even the idea of a trog, right? Do you know what a trog is? It's a very stupid word. A
I don't.
trog is a combination of dog and its nearest tree. There's even a term called in-car, which describes a car that is inside of a garage. But then as you pull the car out, eventually you reach a threshold where you stop being a car. Stop being an in-car, right? What's to stop, an alien species come in and then they would randomly select a few things together. Let's say like, oh, that military base with all the soldiers in there, I'm going to call that one thing now, right? So there is this issue of, it's kind of like semantics, right? Like, how do we could prove that we can identify a thing, we can confirm its existence, but we also have things that are composites, that are like the combination or relationship between other things, right? So this point where, going back to in car, how far out could you pull the car out of the garage that then stops becoming an in car, is a good segue to the ship of Theseus, right? Benny, do you want to remind us of the ship of Theseus?
well, There once was a ship called the Odysseus.
Mhm.
um, I don't remember the exact fable of it, but the general gist of
Mhm.
the ship of Theseus is that as the ship is going on its odyssey, on its journey,
Mhm.
parts of the ship starts breaking down, um, and so they replace the parts again and again and again, and eventually all parts of that ship, every single bit of that ship, got replaced. The mast got replaced, the hull got replaced, the crew quarters got replaced, the uh, the ornaments got replaced, everything. Is it still then the same ship?
And
Is it
further,
still Odysseus?
yeah, and further to that point, if somebody stayed behind and collected all the replacement parts, all the old parts, and then they used that old parts to build the original ship of Theseus, which one is real? Which one is the
That's
actual
cool.
So which one is the actual ship of Theseus? Is it the one that was is it the construction materials involved at the time of creating the ship of Theseus? Or is it the actual ship that is actually registered and actually in operation on the ocean right now?
That just got all its parts replaced.
Yeah. This touches on so this is a very good question, right? Like this touches on
I
how
would say that
Yeah.
the ship assembled by all the old parts
uh-huh.
is the ship of Theseus.
So this is
Oh,
a
oh, hold on, hold on. Can I?
yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So you know how our cells dies and are replaced every single
I was
time,
gonna mention that, yeah. Every 10
right?
years.
Okay, Jamie, you probably articulate it better than I do.
No, it's exactly what he says, right? Like our cells are roughly renewed once every 10 years. All of the cells are completely replaced.
Now
Or am I
imagine
yeah.
Now imagine I collected all those dead cells that's shed off as dead skin cells, etc., or
Mm,
recycled by your body. I somehow re unrecycle them and take them away from you, and I arrange them in a manner that resembles you
mhm.
at the time of your of the cell's death. Would you then be the dead you that is rearranged by your original dead cells?
Which one is Dan, huh?
Or would you be that entity that you are now that's been replaced by all these new cells? What are you then? What is the real you?
Uh, I would say the real me is the one that was slowly replaced. With the one that was slowly rebuilt with replacement cells.
Mhm. But then to
And
a ship,
the
but
other one is the assembly, a copy of me.
So, what then differentiates between you and that ship?
Well, after you said all that, and now I feel like now I don't feel the same way about the ship.
aha.
Hmm.
So actually let me cut in here because we are making a segue into a very important concept. So Peter Inwagen is a philosopher that believes in the ontological nihilism. So basically there
Sorry, Jamie. Before you continue, then I wasn't assaulting your concept or your idea. I was just trying to show you a different way of seeing this.
yeah, that's
I am
basically
assaulted. Do not
Yeah.
speak
yeah,
to me
you're
anymore.
reported. Uh
I'm
but
sorry.
But yeah, in case that isn't obvious, like we're here to like explore different thoughts. So feel free to change your mind because I'm going to be introducing a lot of different people's ideas, and I want us to challenge that, right? So coming back to so
And you can
before,
also feel free to not want to change your mind on a thing. You can
Mhm.
still say no. It's still the ship.
Right?
It's also okay. It's not. We're not here trying to change anybody's mind or anything.
Yeah, so the conundrum, the paradox Benny has introduced here is very simple, right? On the one hand, if you acknowledge the original part that comprises, that constitutes the
Oh,
ship at
I'm
its build,
sorry.
yeah.
Hmm?
I have a thought. I'm not sure how to construct this thought well, but I think a very big difference is that I would say what makes Bernard Bernard is
Mm.
not his cells, it's his mind.
Hmm.
And so even though in 10 years he's going to be physically made out of everything new, he's still Bernard because that's his mind that inhabits that
Hmm.
vessel.
Mm.
So this is brilliant, right? Because this is exactly going where I was going to talk about Peter Inwagen and his idea of organicism, right? So Peter Inwagen argues that we are all made of fundamental everything is made of fundamental particles. So for the sake of simplicity, the term the philosophical term for the most simple building block is called a simples with an S. Simples. Everything is made of a simples, except
A
except
pimple.
for people. Well, except for people, for life, that somehow uh a ship can be wholly replaced and it stops being itself at the, compared to at the time it was constructed, but a human being or a living being can continue to exist as itself regardless of how many times I replace it. So here comes the
But
question, right? What is you're ascribing consciousness, or perhaps that the arrangement of these simples of all these particles in such an intricate way that it creates a life, that then life is a thing, as opposed to no matter how no matter how many particles you arrange into a chair or a table, that in and of itself is not a thing, but a life is. Does that make sense to you guys? What do you think?
I think a thing is a thing regardless of it is alive or if
Mm,
it's not alive. And also it brings me back also a little bit to the mental
mm,
psychological space. Like, are you still you? And
mm,
what determines you as you? Because
exactly.
you 20 years ago, in a sense, is you, but you're definitely not the same person. Your
Yeah. Your
experiences between those
experiences.
20 years shaped you, changed
Mhm.
you, maybe made you a bitter, cynical person, maybe made you a hopeful person. Maybe it went up and down and up and down. Doesn't matter. But you are no longer the same you 20 years ago. So, which you is also then the real you? Are
Yeah.
you really you?
And to sort of relate that point to the first part of our discussion, where Dan mentions the identification of of something's existence is tied to whether it is labeled or not, whether it can be observed by us. So here's the interesting question with the human body, right? Like the question of maximal amputation, right? If I cut Benny up to multiple pieces, at one point,
Because the flesh is weak.
if I just cut him up into pieces, at some point, like we could probably both agree if I take away his limbs, would you still agree that Benny exists?
Yes.
If Benny is
Just
now,
upgraded.
if Benny is whole, is preserved in whole, but he has Alzheimer's and he's lost all his memories, is that still Benny? And further that
I
point,
would say that not in full. Like
hmm,
it's only part of Benny,
so less Benny.
less Benny.
It's a Benny
and
minus, a Benny light.
and what then? Here's a kind of think of it as a challenge to the idea that a thing exists only as long as the labeling makes sense. Or
Oh,
what if we don't agree on the label? If I chop Benny
wait,
up
wait, wait.
into
Can I add one more thing before you continue?
yeah, go ahead.
If you do a brain scan on me, right? Like you completely upload my consciousness into a server,
Oh,
and
uploaded
and
intelligence
and
UI.
yeah, but it's not intelligent. It's just a program that's just replicating my thought patterns and the
Mhm.
logical breakdown of the processes of how I think. Would that be Benny?
Right? So that challenges the
No, no,
idea.
no. What did that? What I want to hear what that then think about it, because with the
Mm.
body concept, it's partly Benny, right? It's Benny without the mind.
Hmm.
But now, if we have the mind without the body, or the construct of the mind, would that still be Benny?
It's an interesting question because it touches about a debate that I had with a friend here.
Mhm.
It was about teleportation, and I view
Ah,
teleportation as you've been killed in one spot and somebody made a complete copy of you in
Mm.
another.
I know what you
Uh,
mean.
Yeah.
and for me, I don't know how to answer on this question
Mm.
because I'm not sure if we can ever find out. But in your case, how I imagine, like let's like if somebody copies you and starts another Benny in like on a computer, I would say that's a copy of you. It's not the original Benny. Yeah, sure, that
Mm.
it will behave like you, but it's a copy. Like it's not the Benny. It's Benny two.
Benny too.
Uh,
So in this in
uh,
this sense, do you then concur that Benny stopped to exist? That the original Benny no longer exists?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Hmm.
I would say so. Have you
Unless
heard?
there's a way to actually like without killing your consciousness, without killing
But
your your mind, not as a object like a brain, but like your consciousness, I guess you call
hmm.
it. If you somehow can transfer to a computer, I don't know, connect your brain to a computer with many wires, and
Hmm.
eventually it will migrate over there.
But what
Then
if?
could say that that is still the original Benny, that just had all his brain parts replaced by
Mechanical
synthetic
part.
ones.
Yeah.
But what if
Okay, wait,
I'm a?
hold on. Can I also ask one question? This is throwing a wrench in the spanner, but like I really want to ask this question.
Hmm.
If you one day wake up and you realize you are not the original copy of you, would that be a problem? Think about it first before you answer, please. Like if you one day actually genuinely have undeniable ultimate proof that you are not who you thought you were, and that or the product of who you are now is because you were essentially created as a clone or a copy, would you be able to accept that and move on with your life as though nothing happened? Or would that shift something fundamentally? Would you still then be able to see yourself as you, because what you experienced makes you the you are now? Or do you see yourself as some kind of imitation built on something else, and that you now call into question what actually makes you you?
I think, if I may,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I think that it in general it wouldn't be a problem for me. That's how I feel. Of course, if I would be genuinely in that situation, it's possible that I would feel different. But from what I can imagine and feel right now, I would say like you mentioned, I am what I am, and I am what I was formed by my experiences and
Hmm.
everything. And even if I'm a copy of someone, the moment I was copied, I like the second I appeared as a copy, I think I'm already a different person. We're like going on different paths, and
Hmm.
yeah, sure, we have a like we are identical at that point, but I would say we would start to drift apart the second
Yeah.
the
Okay.
apart happened.
So you're saying that the past does not define you for who you are. The past is just a springboard for you to then move forward from, and then your decisions you make then going forward defines you as who you are,
Yeah, I guess so.
So the question.
regardless of whatever the other copy does. He would then be a twin, but he moves on his own way, and you will be a twin, but you move on your own way.
Yeah, yeah.
So are you the original Dan?
No, it doesn't matter. He's saying it doesn't matter because he,
I am not the
regardless
original
of the
Dan.
past, regardless of the springboard which he stepped off of, or he will be his original copy as of now and moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
I am not the original Dan. I am a copy.
Yeah, but you're the original copy of your original Dan.
Yeah, yeah. I'm
You know
my
what I
own
mean?
object.
Yeah,
I'm another person. It just so happened that through some twisted thing, I am an identical at my creation with another.
yeah.
So
Essentially, he branches off, but
Mm-hmm.
because he branches off, he is his then. Because of the branching off, he is then his own version of Dan,
So in
like
other words,
THEN. Yeah.
if the original copy committed a crime, you are absolved from it because you're not the original Dan.
Is it? I mean, wait. When you do you say it causes a crime, do you mean to a past that you were connected to and rooted from, or then moving forward after the branching off of separate?
Oh, that's so interesting. How about to a past of, say, you're a copy Dan that you didn't ask to exist, but the original Dan before the cloning process committed a crime. Which one that are you still liable? Is the Dan still liable to the past crime? He didn't ask to exist.
Yeah, but none of us asked to exist in this world either.
Mm,
I would say that
Are
he's
we?
not
I would say that he
as
will
much
carry
as
the guilt. Mm.
emotionally it would be hard. But if
uh-huh.
he's a copy, mm,
But then, how can you prove that he is the
it's not.
copy, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you don't have proof, then no. Of
Okay.
course,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
liable.
I think the then branch Dan, the then branch Dan,
Hmm.
it's then is then
The then Dan.
it's then going to maybe carry the memories of these past and the emotional bearing and and load of this past,
Hmm.
but they can practice mindfulness and grace in the way that they also understand that um, that while they are a break off offshoot of that past moving forward, um, it doesn't it's not blame per se, but this is also now something that they have to carry and live with.
Hmm. Let's take a small break as Dan needs to go. We'll reconvene where we talk about uh philosopher Inwagen's point on what life is, because the idea that the arrangement of particles of chair isn't necessarily a chair. That doesn't mean chairs exist, but somehow if it constitutes a human being or a living being, that then that living being exists. So we'll be back in a short break. Okay, now we're back. So we do have still a bunch of topics to cover. There is the universalism, and then we have a special composition question of the criterion that is required to make a thing a thing. Then there's just a lot of further discussions about um, the major criticisms of ontology. Like, namely, there are people out there that believe that this is a linguistic debate, as opposed to as opposed to whether the thing actually does exist. It's a linguistic debate as opposed to a scientific debate. So that's all that's very interesting. So, but we will end the episode here. But before we do that, Benny, could you clarify at this moment, after all we've talked about, what would you say your position leans towards? Do you believe a chair exists independent of its construction and its components, or do you believe that chairs in fact do not exist. It's just a label, but the atoms that comprises of the chair is what actually exists. We are just being convenient when we refer to, oh, look at those atoms arranged chair-wise. What would you say is your stance right now?
Well, if you're a bit of an old head like us, the internet,
Mhm.
I'm gonna quote a meme now. ¿Por qué no dos?
Yeah, why not both?
Why can it not be a combination of the two? Why does it have to be exclusive to each other? Why can a chair without a label, just purely on its function, not exist as a chair or as our understanding of what a thing is as a chair? And independent of our labeling of it, and why does a thing has to be labeled for it to be a thing?
That is precisely the debate, right? Because we're talking about ontology. The purpose of it is to have a sort of, I don't want to use the word scientific, but a reliable way to define something, right? When you introduces that, oh, why not both? Why not both? Like, it would be very deeply unsatisfying if somebody explains, okay, well, like, a fiat currency is simultaneously this, but also that, right? Like, we
Yeah,
need
okay,
a.
fair enough. But you also can you also can then say that yes, okay, this is important, especially in the medical field, but why can't we then specify? Just like a chair has different kinds of chair, why
Mhm.
can't we specify that yes, this is important in this context, so we then focus the discussion within that context. So how is a chair helpful in a in the medical term? Well, it's helpful because you let your body rest, blah 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 blah. But in the other mechanical term, maybe I'm stupid, but I think the ability to accept the fact that hey, it doesn't matter, and we have to maybe let go is also important as a skill.
I
Just
mean,
like
I mean, look,
why did bad things happen to you in the past? Circumstance, blah blah blah, all these other reasons. But without all that, it's in the past now. You've learned what you learn what you can from it, and you've gotten out as much as you can positively out of it. So it's time to let go. It's in the past now.
so do
You know what I
chairs
mean?
exist?
I would say on the material realm, yes, chairs do exist. I can touch it, I can
Hmm.
feel it, I can interact with it. It exists. But the concept of it being a specific purpose, the concept of it being a thing that fulfills a specific purpose, ends with our existence. On the material realm, it stays behind, but the concept of it stops. And that's what
In
I mean. Why not both?
so in the
It still exists
material
in one form, but it doesn't exist in the other form.
so in the material realm of, you point out that the chairs do exist, as in you can touch it, you can feel it. Uh, are those the criterion that you require for it to exist in the material world?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
So in the material realm, that a chair that exists, that you can touch it, you say that because it's here, it serves a function, and I can touch it, it exists, right?
Mhm.
So what are the criterion for its composition and constitution for it to remain a chair? If I take away the chair legs, if
No,
I
it doesn't remain a chair.
so
That's
okay.
what I meant by like the concept of it being a chair stops because we doesn't we there is no living being thing
Well,
to
how
perceive it
about
as a chair.
the okay, so how but so then when it comes to the
It's like sorry, it's like Dan's concept of the living husk of my body without my mind.
Mhm.
It's it's just a part of me, but it's no longer me. It used to be a chair, But because it does it and it can still technically be used as a chair
Mm-hmm.
for something can still sit on it, but the concept of it being the sole purpose of it of a species of living beings using it for a specific purpose stops. So
Mm-hmm.
even though the functionality of it still exists, the idea of it being a chair and that it only have that one sole function stops. Do you understand what I mean? But the material thing still exists, and
That's
it
brilliant.
remains
So
there until something is affected by it and it gets destroyed or
yeah, so then my
recon.
question for you is, at what well, so where do you draw the line? Where do you, if I start chipping away the chair one piece of wood at a time, at one point does it conceptually stop being a chair to me and you? Do we
When
all
it can no longer stand on its own, and when there is no longer any surface area for me for an ass to be able to sit on it.
what if it's leaning against the wall, but it has one stick that it still kind of balances? You can sit on it, but you can't really fully relax. You need to sort of balance yourself. Have you done that before? Like,
Well,
how you use something as a chair, but you need to like balance yourself. Is that still a chair?
it brings me back to my point regarding I can sit on a rail.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a chair?
Exactly. So I'm
I
asking
mean,
you the question.
it's not as the level of comfort I get from
Mm-hmm.
sitting on a chair is not the same as the level of comfort I sit on a rail.
Yeah.
So in a sense, it stops being a chair. I can still use it as a chair,
Mm-hmm. But it
but I
stops
don't
being a
get the
chair.
same level of expected comfort I do get from what I expect out of a chair.
Yeah.
So conceptually, at that point of you chipping away at it,
Mm-hmm.
even though I still exist and the concept of chair still exists, I would say that thing materially is no longer a chair. Because one, it doesn't satisfy my criteria of it can stand on its own.
Mm-hmm.
And two, it doesn't satisfy my criteria of this is comfortable enough for me to rest upon my ass.
So based on your very specific set of criterions, if we test this logic on a sweater and I pull away the sweater one thread at a time, where do you draw the line? When does it stop being a sweater?
A sweater stops being a sweat, like the whole arm sleeve of the sweater can stop existing, and it turns a sweater into a vest, which
Right.
still fulfills the same criteria of the sweater, which is to keep my main body warm.
Mm-hmm.
Just it's less effective, right?
Yeah.
And that's just like the whole the sub umbrella definition of what a chair is, and then there's
Yeah.
the whole sub definitions of this is a rocking chair. It fulfills a specific targeted different criteria. This is the lazy chair. It's another one. This is the beanbag chair. Is another one, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have different labels or different. We name different things from under the same umbrella because we then start to become specific with its function, right? A chair, an office chair is still a chair, but now it has the wheels on it so you can move it around easier, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
still a chair.
Yeah.
You can still move it the same way as you could still move a chair, but the fact that we added wheels on it, it makes it specific to a criteria, right? So you ask me now with my specific criterias, is it still a chair? Yes. And with the sweater example, is it still a sweater? Technically, yes, but we have a better term for it, which more precisely convey the information of what I am talking about to you, which is what I mentioned very briefly at the start that talking is just the conveying of an idea or information from one living entity to another.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand you're trying to allude to this whole like is this then a scientific debate or is this then a linguistic debate? And I would say a bit of both because you are using the linguistics as a way to bridge that information regarding the scientifics of it.
No, when we refer to something, we're already engaging with linguistics, are we not? We're calling it
Yes, we
a
are.
sweater,
But
right?
we also have to have the same understanding of what we mean when we say the things we say. Like, how can I prove that the colors I've learned to call red is the same color
Mm-hmm.
of what you see, which you then call red? You could be seeing blue and calling it red, or no, let's not make it about you because harder for it's easier to understand as a listener
Yeah.
that I could be seeing a color you determine blue, but I grew up learning that that color is called red. So, how can we prove that I am seeing the same shade of color, same shade of light refraction that you are, while still calling it the same thing, and that we understand each other on the same level? Because my experience might not be the same as your experience, but you understand that we are talking on the same thing because we agreed that the linguistics is conveying the same ideology, same information.
That's the whole point of this ontological debate, is that when we use the word red, how do we make sure we are talking about red? Are there fallacies where you perceive red as something actually different? Right? Like there is this is a very interesting point that you brought up, because this is into the realm where, in perception wise, we cannot prove our perception, right? And the point of previous discussion was to challenge the idea that, hey, we talked about the labeling of something, and
Ah,
I asked you, like, when does a
I,
sweater stop being
I disagree with you. Sorry, I want to stop you for a second.
Mm,
I disagree with you because we have known and reliable methods to test color blindness. In a
mhm.
sense, there is a way. Maybe we just don't haven't found the right or the best way yet, but there is a way to see that we are not, in fact, observing and perceiving the same colors.
But do you understand how this debate can go down? Because
I
eventually,
do understand how it goes down,
because
but I'm
yeah,
just saying
you
that
could say that
there is a way to prove um, that we don't perceive the same things.
what you're saying is that in scientific ways, I could imagine that you could use the test of relativism to test the perception of colors. And because of how I could say, oh, what's the difference between this red compared to this? For example, we could use saturation to compare, to compare if the difference in saturation would then constitute on the color table. We could, in color theory, say that yes, you are seeing red. But the a philosopher could always keep pointing to the point in which you prove reality, in the sense that, I'll give you a comparison, right? Um, Newton, in the person we account for inventing gravity, has invented the formula of explaining how gravity, this the acceleration of gravity, and technically he's referring to gravitation. And in his own papers, he claims, he said that I can observe it, I can use it, I could do things with it to predict. I could use gravity to predict the falling speed of an apple, etc., etc. But for how I explain where gravity comes from, I have no answer. Right? Uh,
But we have an answer now.
we don't. We have an answer for gravitation, but we don't have an answer for gravity. Gravity is
Did we not found out that it's
what
actually not a constant pull, but a series of waves?
it's an acceleration. So what we found basically was that the greater the mass, the greater the gravitation. And gravitation, what we describe it is that if you're massive enough, you cause a bend in space time. And in that bent space time, we observe that inert objects, so in other words, objects that are not moving, uh, tend to pass and accelerate towards each other. We don't have an answer of what that force is. Why is that the case? Why is it that it causes a bend in space time? We don't have proof for that. I'll one up that even. We don't have a proof of. Did you know that we don't have a proof of speed of light? we have observed the speed of light in using two synchronized clocks of it going forward and back, right? There's a Veritasium video about this, very interesting. We don't actually, so we know this the amount of time it took to for the trip, right? Going forward and then back. But we don't have an explanation of, we don't have the exact speed of a single, like the going, right? We don't have a single speed of, we in other words, we cannot confidently say if the speed of light is X, then the trip to get from one clock to another is half of that. We don't have proof of that. It's impossible to observe, right? In other words, in our reality, it could be
Can
that
you
light
answer?
travels really fast forward, and as it reflects back, it slows down. It's mind blowing, is it not? Like, look it up. It's Veritasium's. We have not measured the speed
Yeah,
of
I
light.
mean, it makes sense that it's slowing down, especially if you have like a glass, which the light has to go through. Because we know that while light travels in a straight line, as it passes through glass, it diverges.
But it doesn't slow down, Benny. Light does not slow down. It can be diffused, it can be refracted, it can be reflected. Uh, it doesn't slow down. That would be like saying if I,
So what if we let it reflect several times,
yeah,
maybe over 100 chronological mirrors,
in a vacuum, it doesn't slow down.
but we
Be-
don't live in a vacuum?
yeah.
And
In
does
other
a
words,
vacuum consist of antimatter as well?
wait, no, no, no. Antimatter is that has to do with the Big Bang theory of matter and equal amounts of matter and antimatter being created at the Big Bang. But there's a paradox because we have more matter than antimatter. But going back to the light, right? What you just
Can you confidently say that though?
say what?
Can you confidently prove that we do not have the same amount of antimatter and matter?
Yes,
Are you sure that antimatter does not exist in the vacuum between matter?
that's the thing. We don't call that antimatter, then we call it dark energy.
So what is then the difference?
The difference is that it doesn't exist
What
as observable
constitutes
antimatter.
dark energy? Like what constitutes dark energy? And does dark energy as
Dark energy is not constituted of anything. It is an explanation for a paradox in our observation, because we can scientifically and definitively observe we have more matter than antimatter. Because what do you think happens when there is the same amount of matter and antimatter? We would be
atrophy?
annihilated, Benny. We won't exist.
Exactly, atrophy.
Not
Yo.
atrophy nor entropy. We simply would be annihilated upon creation, right? It is for the it is definitively for the fact that we have more matter that we exist today. Otherwise, they've already cancelled out. We won't be here. And so the scientists have this interesting question. It's like, wait, why is that? It doesn't make sense in our in terms of Big Bang theory. And
And
one explanation they have is that, okay, well, it could be dark energy. Dark energy simply is a term that we ascribe to. It's something we cannot observe, that we don't know for the theory of relativity to make sense. Or is it the theory of quantum physics? I forget.
so we
It's
don't
super
know
interesting.
what it is. It's a unicorn thing, a unicorn magical thing that we say this has to exist. Not everything else doesn't
Yeah,
make sense.
but wait, going. Oh my god, what a tangent! Going back, right? Ontologically, we want to be able to confirm a thing's existence, and if you branched off into two things, right? There's the labeling, and then there's the material existence of such a thing, right? And do you see the problem where if part of what confirms a thing's existence is contingent on you, how do you ensure that you and I see it the same? That
You know
in
what? You know
the
what?
yeah.
I'm just gonna go throw this into absurdism and nihilism. We can't prove it, maybe.
Hmm.
It doesn't matter. What's important is that we have an understanding, we can agree to disagree, and if it doesn't matter, then Why let it bother us?
It matters because we talked about the applications of how let's say, let's talk about legal rights then, right? You've gone to war. I am your widow. You have died. The state brings your body back. There is only chunks of flesh of you left. The state disagrees with me on the fact that this little chunk is not Bernard. But to me, I disagree. I say, I love that person. That's Bernard. But the state says, no, it would, for it to be Bernard, maybe the heart needs to exist. Maybe the head still needs to be preserved, right? So
It
you,
used
you
to be
could,
a part of Bernard.
yeah, but
It
can you
used to
can
be
you
a thing
see
that
like
made up Bernard.
the
It's no longer.
yeah, so the ontological definition of Bernard is very important because because then we could exist in the
So
world,
okay, so you as a widow, what are you what is your objective here?
is to have as many pieces of you as I can have left, right? So you
And
can,
what will you do with it? It's gonna rot eventually anyway.
maybe I could say goodbye to it. It's just an example, don't overthink it, but I could say goodbye to
Yeah,
it.
yeah, 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 yeah. But then, so you want to say goodbye to it.
Mhm.
You get as much of the pieces as you can. You cremate it.
I
You
eat it.
do. You put the ashes in a jar, maybe, or you eat it because then you want to be one with it, absorb the pieces of me
Have
into
you
your own
inside of
body.
me.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
that's your prerogative.
yes,
To me, to me, I am dead. It doesn't matter anymore what you do with me. You can do whatever you want to do with me.
but do you see
I
how
am
like
dead,
this? But
therefore it doesn't matter. To you, you determine these pieces important.
mhm.
The state wants to maximize their resources.
Yeah.
And if they determine that you as an individual getting these organic materials back to you is not worth their effort, because then if you can do it, if you can ask for it, then so can everybody else. But some of them want to, some of them don't want to. So then the state can make a cost benefit ratio if it's worth it or not. If
That
it's
wouldn't
not, and then you are not happy with it, you can then start your campaign against it.
No, but Benny, that wouldn't make sense if hundreds of thousand people are dying at the same time. Logistics does not add up. The point isn't whether you agree with the state or not, is that we have real world ramifications of ontological definitions. And the most important paradox that I'm trying to point out is that the point of where do you draw the line, right?
Does it matter? Why can't the line? Why does the line has to be straight? Why can't it be a squiggly line?
It has to
Why does the
be,
line
it
have to
has to
exist in the
be,
first place?
it has to be a definitive line in the interest for us to agree on something.
Fair point. I am not this. I'm not saying that
You know, think
there
about this
shouldn't
in
be
the
a line,
context of law. How
but
would you feel if any
but
administration can interpret the law to their liking,
but
right?
who is making then the law, and who is the law benefiting? Because the law doesn't always benefit the majority or the individual.
But the purpose of a law is to regulate all.
To have some sort of order so it doesn't devolve into chaos. But life in itself is chaos.
Yeah, but you cannot run
You're
a
trying to make
country.
order out of chaos
But you cannot be
as much
some.
as you can, as much as you can.
But do you
I'm not
understand?
saying that chaos is good. I'm not saying that law is bad. I'm not saying it's not good or important to define something.
I understand you're pointing
I'm
out the
just saying,
realities of things, but but as somebody who has the interest of keeping civilization going, we need to have standards. We need to have definitive boundaries when it comes to our definitions. Like I understand the law isn't always going to be fairly applied everywhere, right? But in the interest of the continuation of our empire, for example, I would like for there to be very clear boundaries. I would like for me to interpret the law the same way that my future offsprings, many generations from now, could still interpret it the same way.
so what happens if we say this is how we interpret it? And
Hmm.
those people who say, actually, I disagree, then how about we say, okay, if you disagree, then you can join those guys who disagree.
You can have that's how, yeah, that's how you get apartheid state. Actually, you just
But
described
but
South
but
Africa.
but it's not like in a menacing or antagonistic way. It's just but because you still want to be able to say, hey, look, We disagree, but
Mhm.
that's okay. We still work with each other. You just work with your system, we'll work with our system.
That won't work if I have governance over you, Bernard. I could say that imagine me being the king, and I said, "Oh, okay, hey, let's say you cannot settle into these houses. You think your people deserve to." This is getting
So you
close to the
segregate, right? You break apart.
yeah. But if I am the king, then I would say, yeah, we don't agree on this. You could go do your own thing, but what actually transpires? My people still get to keep
So
their
your
houses.
fear is that you cannot profit from them anymore as the king.
Yeah, in any way, we're going on tangents, but that is
Very
the
strong tangent.
that is the very point of discussing ontology and why it's very important, right? Do we ever ascribe like do you know the linguistic part of what's interesting is that when I say, hey, Bernard is this man right here, right? I am saying I am pointing out to a fact that is very real, observable to both me and you. Hey, you see this man? That's Bernard. Another
Am
way
I
of
the man that my consciousness inhabit, or am I the
wait,
consciousness that's
okay.
trapped
A-
in the
an-
man?
Another way of me describing Bernard is another way of me using the verb or the predicate is for descriptions, is to point out the properties you have. Uh, Bernard is the guy with a huge dick is a property, but Bernard doesn't equal guy with huge dick. Guy with huge dick describes Bernard, but that doesn't mean he equals that, right? Whereas if I use the word is in this identifying sense, Bernard is literally this thing. Do you see? Do you feel? Do you touch? Right? And like this is why like this debate is very
That
multifaceted and complicated.
First of all, once again, I ask, am I the flesh puppet that my consciousness inhabit, or
Hmm.
am I the consciousness that's trapped in the flesh puppet? And why did you have to absolutely use the example of dicks? Can you not say the Bernard is this bald man, but not all bald men are Bernards?
But in any case, it was a good ego boosting analogy.
I
Um,
appreciate what you're trying to do, but it's not necessary. And thank you, but it's okay, you know.
Join our Patreon
I
for
prefer
exclusive
underselling
pictures.
and overperforming than overselling and then underperforming.
Oh dear. I mean, we've talked enough about like what a chair is, what isn't a chair, and we have seen that there are very distinct. We somehow apply the logic differently when it comes to a person, right? A person memory, a person's consciousness, a person's experience and past and experiences and trauma, etc. These are properties of us, right? They alone are not us. In the same
Mhm.
way that in the same way that a chair let's say if a chair is a red and glossy, that we cannot say a chair is red, a chair is only glossy. So that there comes this debate where um, it seems like identifying it, confirming the existence of a chair differs from confirming the existence of a living being, as the philosopher Inwagen pointed out. So, where do you side on the human front? Where do you side on the living being front? Like, what is Bernard?
Hey,
Just as a conclusion.
I'm gonna be saying something that's gonna piss a lot of people off, maybe.
Uh huh.
Where it's not exactly nihilism, because nihilism is basically like it doesn't have any meaning, it doesn't matter, so what? Who cares?
The nihilism in this context
That's
is
not.
that everything is just particles. That there is
Yeah, well,
no
basically,
Bernard.
there's no meaning, there's nothing, there's no deeper reason. Who cares? Who
Yeah,
gives a fuck?
yeah.
But then again, that's too nihilistic for me. I think it's a mix of everything. Well, it's more like, hey, look, I understand why it's important,
Yeah.
but it's so beyond me that right now it doesn't matter that much to me. I mean, probably once I start needing the law, then I'll be like, actually.
I mean, it's
But
all just
like,
it's all just deeper thinking about this. The point of our existence is not. I mean, like, yeah, it's not applicable every day. It's not something you need
yeah,
to be
but like
overly
the thing
concerned
about
about.
existence is like if something bothers you to the point where it wrecks you, then why hold on to it? Why not let it go? Find yourself again, achieve peace, and then slowly build it up again if it's that important. But if it's to the point where you start losing yourself,
Hmm. So
then you should take a step back, I think.
I I want to put you
Put
in
put it.
Harvard. I put you in Harvard University in their philosophy class, and then just going, "Oh, why do you stress yourself?" And then all these philosophy students are pulling their hair out. It's like, "Oh, fuck this hippie European."
Oh, no, no, I'm not. I'm
But
not. I
but
understand the importance of it, but the fact that you are pulling your hair out, you're already starting basically a form of self-harm. Wouldn't it be a good idea to take a step back, take a deep breath, and then re-enter it again
I
of
mean,
when
yeah, I
your
mean,
mind
isn't that what they're
is up?
doing by debating about this? Like, they're not, of course, they're not physically pulling hair out. They're just
No, but
toiling.
the fact that they are debating about it
Hmm.
is good because you're throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks, right?
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
poking holes into each other's theory, and hopefully all the holes will turn out into a beautiful mosaic in the end.
So if you have to say,
It's
then what is burnout? As a wrap up to this episode, like, let's say let's see what you think. Like, what do you think is
there's
burnout?
multi-levels to it. There's multi-levels to it.
Good,
But if
good.
you want the holistic what is, I mean, of course, there's
How
more
about this? I'm
so
an alien. I know about humanity from a scientific point of view in the same way you know about ants, for example. I
mm.
come down to Earth, and you've been tasked you're the only one who speaks our language. You've been tasked to describe Bernard. What would you say? Like, what is Bernard?
Well, um, you are aware that there of the existence of hive minds.
Mm-hmm.
Um, are you aware of the opposite of what a hive mind is?
Wait, hang on. Hive minds. What examples do we have yet? It's slimes, right? Wait, no, slimes are not hive mind.
Not essentially, no, but you can also have a hive mind slime, but
What's an example of a hive
essentially,
mind in nature?
I'm sure there is a couple.
Because if you're talking about social animals like ants, like termites or wasps, they're not hive minds.
They're
They're
not hive minds.
they
They're
respond
a
to
hive,
pheromones.
but they're not hive minds.
But what's an example of a hive mind? Oh,
Do
what
we
about
have
like
any?
the giant ecosystem of like these, how like in the Amazon forest there's like this one tree
Yeah.
that all belong to like is that a hive? No, that's not a hive mind
Is that a hive mind?
because they're not animals.
Hold on, let me Google this real quick. Examples of hive minds in nature. Minds in nature. In nature, sorry. Okay, let's see. Apparently, honeybees, but is it a hive mind? It's a colony.
It's not a hive mind. A hive mind suggests that
Mm,
the drones are not sentient, that it's being controlled. Like Rick and Morty, like Unity.
yes, yes.
Alone is the one that controls everything.
Well, apparently, what?
Fungus, maybe?
Mushrooms? Yeah, but is like the tree each fungus an individual fungus, or is it just an organism? I don't know. I don't think we have a hive mind. I think it's just a scientific concept of, oh, we have a hive. What if the same, but the mind is connected, right?
I can give you an example of an anti-hive mind that actually exists. It's octopus and cuttlefish. Their limbs have neurons in them, But to a certain degree, they don't actually have full control over their arms. They behave on their own.
Mhm.
It's crazy. Anyway, continue.
Well, the fact that you as an entity said that you understand what a hive mind is means that you understand the concept of a greater consciousness with
Mm,
many feeler consciousness.
yeah.
Yet the feeler consciousness is uh, experiencing things separately, but feeding the data of that experience into the greater consciousness, which then feedback loops back into each feeler consciousness, right?
Mm,
Would you say that is a hive mind?
mm, con- transferring consciousness. I genuinely thought a hive mind is simply that you have the overlord that basically has control over each individual drone. The drone itself are not sentient, they don't experience anything. It's as if they are detached body parts that are autonomous. It's
You
kind of
just
like
said they're not sentient, but they're autonomous.
autonomy doesn't have to coexist with sentience. Slightly.
Fair, but in the feelers, the drones still feed information into the
Yeah, in the same way our eyes feed information to my brain.
yeah. And in real time, this is happening,
Mm,
and the uploaded information is simultaneously downloaded in real time to each drone back as well.
like they're synced.
Yeah. And each drone also have the capacity of and processing power
Hmm.
of the overlord. Now imagine that, but the opposite end of it, where it's one single organism but
Hmm.
has no drones, right?
Yeah.
And this entity is wrapped in a biochemical flash pocket, which the main goal of the flash pocket is to provide energy and
Hmm.
mobility to ensure the survival of that consciousness. That consciousness has been shaped by its upbringing. It was introduced into the world in a vulnerable and unmobile and weak form, which then, via time, consumption of resources, and experience, shape both the physical flesh puppet
Hmm.
and the consciousness of the entity, the experience the entity is. And after 32 years of this, and then explain all what this entity has experienced, which constituted into being Bernard,
Yeah.
which would then take a while, but I'm just skipping it forward until, okay, they got that data. Thus, simplified version, that is Bernard.
So to recap, Bernard is the continuous uh evolution of the meat sack that responds to a central consciousness that in of itself also evolves.
Yes, and this Bernard I'm talking about now is constantly changing, as is also constantly experiencing something else. While my idea of him is just to the point where I last interacted with him, right?
So the alien would then ask you, okay, well, what's the difference between Bernard and this gorilla? Because to define Bernard, don't you then have to define, okay, the meat sack has to be human shaped? It cannot be dog shaped, for example. That won't be Bernard, right? If I Here's an
technically.
interesting question, right? If I transfer your consciousness into another meat sack that's constantly evolving and changing, say in the meat sack of a worm, are you still Bernard?
Does the worm have the same ability to process and comprehend
Yes. So
as
so
the
the
entity
basically
that
the
was
worm has
transferred
your
out?
brain and processing power.
Would the brain survive in in the anatomy of a worm?
Let's assume that it does.
Okay, that makes no sense because I don't think the anatomy of the worm would
Okay,
be able
well,
to
we could
provide.
forget worm then. Let's say pig. You can survive in the anatomy of a pig. There is enough
Does
cavity.
Yeah, is there also enough calories and
Roughly the same, 2000 calories a day.
okay, first, I think the whole experience of waking up suddenly in a different body, in a different existence would be mind-boggling, soul-destroying horror scenario. But then I won't be able to interact with the world as I do now, right? I'll be able to squeal and scream, but I
Hmm.
won't be able to form concurrent sentences.
Okay, so in addition to the parameters you set, basically a consciousness that evolves and a meat sack that evolves, but you contend that the meat sack cannot be animal shaped. It has to remain the same function as your former self. So,
No, I mean the shape itself doesn't matter, right?
okay,
It
so what
can
if
be
it's
a flesh
another?
blob, but the flesh blob can have appendages which
Mhm.
interacts with the world around it
Yeah.
and is able to move in the same um, capacity.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and the conscious entity is still the same.
Yeah.
It's like an exact replica and is
Mm-hmm.
able to voice and communicate as the previous entity Bernard is able to.
Yeah. Then it's still you.
Then it's still me, but because we are social creatures, I won't be perceived as the same by my peers.
That doesn't matter. Like
Thus,
the one that's observing
no,
you
no,
is the
no, no, no. It
alien.
does matter. It does matter. It does matter. What is the ultimate goal of life?
No, no, no. We're talking about an alien trying to get you to tell him what makes you you. He's not asking what
Well,
makes life life. He's asking what makes Bernard Bernard. The definition of like what is Bernard's existence.
yeah, but the alien asked me, but then if I change this, would they still be them?
No,
I
I'm
would
saying
say,
theoretically, if at the point of being questioned, we pause time, I then replace you, your meat sack, to something else, would you tell the alien that you're still you? Or do you or to you, do you think you're different now? You're not the same
I'm not
Bernard.
because that would have been then my new reality, right?
Yeah. Well, let's say it's just immediate, right? Like at the point of you've just woken up in this new, let's be even more lenient. Let's say you woke up in my body.
Yeah, but have I always been waking up in your body, or is
No, no,
there
no.
a sudden switch?
Suddenly, like you've been tasked to tell the alien what defines Bernard, what is Bernard's existence. Right before you were about to meet the alien, uh,
Well,
you wake
well,
up
see
in
that,
my.
that's the thing which I talked about then about being a clone as well, right? To that point where it branched off from the norm or from the consistent,
Mm-hmm, because
I
we.
was that. But now that I wake up in a different body,
Mm-hmm,
I am what my perception of what I am is in a new experience, in a new environment going forward. The everything else that brought me to who I thought I was to that springboard is just a springboard. It is just the basis mold of which I then develop from. I hope I will be in such a calm state of mind when such an experience occurs, but I probably would have a mental breakdown.
I mean, wait. We need to still go back. Like we're still discussing what defines
Yes, and
what
that's
is.
that's also what I will say if the alien says, or if the alien literally, bam, I'm now you, I'm now me in your body, are you still you?
Mm-hmm.
Then that would be what I would say. I am now a new experience going forward. I'm no longer the me because I now had the traumatic change in my reality. But going forward, this would be a new me.
So to satisfy being Bernard, it cannot be, let's recap again, like the evolving
There cannot be a
consciousness.
traumatic and sudden and holistic change in the entity in itself.
You know, do you see we're adding even more properties to what Bernard is now?
Yes,
First it was the evolving meat sack along with, you
but
know,
it was never easy in the first place. We only try to simplify things down, but by simplifying things down, we lose all the properties of being it. It's like
yeah,
what I
so,
said, like the chair is just the umbrella idea.
no, but
It's
yeah,
like
that's
humans are
precisely
the
the
umbrella
point, right?
idea, but Bernard is the subsection of the chairs, right?
Uh,
Even rocking chairs, there's many different kinds of rocking chairs. You start to be specific. You start to be specific into what you're talking about. You're discussing chair as the umbrella term, where I say, or let's talk about Bernard and humanity. You're talking about humanity as the umbrella term. But if you want to talk about Bernard in particular, then you have to start adding specifics. If you want to talk about the rocking chair model X500 by IKEA, then it's not just a chair. It's then now chair model X500 by IKEA with its rocking, it has its rocks and it has this function and it has that function. Do you see what I'm trying to say about? We were talking about an umbrella term. Now
I
we're talking about a specific
No, no, no. We're
subject.
veering off a little too far. I was still at the page where we talk about how you would, what confirms Bernard's existence. What is Bernard, right? I'm trying to ask you what are your criterias to be a Bernard, which is why I posit the question: Hey, if this meat sack that belongs to this Bernard's consciousness has been replaced, is would you still consider that Bernard? And you're telling me that is an offshoot of Bernard, but I'm asking you back to the very essence of the question. It can be an offshoot. How you can name it a rocking chair, you can name it a worm Bernard, or you like. I'm not contesting that, but I'm contesting that. Do you then still consider that Bernard? Is it still the Bernard that you would consider to be you?
Well, the Bernard at this exact moment of recording
Mhm.
can be considered, another entity can be considered this Bernard only under the criteria that it had experienced everything that this Bernard has experienced
Mhm.
under the specific conditions of that experience.
Mhm. Does it need to be shaped the
But
same?
if there is a deviation, if there is a deviation in the experience, then you risk a different conclusion from the outcome of that experience. And if there is a different conclusion from the outcome of said experience, then there is already a snowball effect of now this is starting to be a different Bernard.
Okay, so you're concurring that the to constitute as Bernard, there needs to be a continuity of your conscious experience. And my question is to you, the meat sack that's attached to that conscious experience that is continual, uh, does it need to be the same as the one you are now? Can I swap your meat sack out with mine? Can I swap yours out with Dan's? Is that still the Bernard at the time? If we pause a freeze frame at that second, is that still Bernard? I understand you will have a very different experience after that. The continuity gets broken, but at the precise moment of replacement, is that still you?
I would say yes, but
Mm,
in the microsecond that follows it up, the realization that there has been a drastic change in the container in the meat sack already rapidly starts to diverge from Bernard as a copy.
okay, I understand that. So how about this? Like the continuity of kind of like the turbulence of your conscious experience, it needs to remain the same, and that is influenced by the meat sack that you inherit. So let's posit another situation where you have now fallen asleep. You cannot experience anything. You're sleeping now. Are you still Bernard when you're asleep or unconscious for that matter? Benny?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, I'm thinking.
And if I replace your meat sack whilst you're unconscious and you remain a vegetative state, is that still Bernard?
Well, the meat sack would still be Bernard, but it's like how you asked Dan earlier. Like
Mm,
if I've been freeze frame, if I've been cryoed, he said it's the husk of Bernard, it's the meat
mm,
sack of Bernard,
yeah,
but it's not Bernard,
yeah.
right?
So
And
you would
you
say
say
that if you're
if you are
unconscious,
sleeping, it's basically similar
mm,
because there is no input and there is no output.
you're still breathing and exalting air. You're just not taking in information and then spewing out information.
Exactly. There is no input and there is no output.
But the physical input output still exists. You mean if you're unconscious, you still shit, right?
Yeah, but like just like you've been cryoed, there is no output.
No, well,
And there
that's
can't be any
frozen,
output
right?
if there is no input.
Well, what about like the state of being asleep then? There is still input. You're still drawing air in to sustain the body. You're
You're
still,
still hearing things, you still will wake up
yeah.
if
And
you
here's an
get
interesting
taken back.
point to the consciousness argument where, like, I've listened to this today from Alex O'Connor, where the people in the past, if you go beyond like 20,000 years ago, where like even in the Bible, biblical times, right? Like the people would describe dreams very differently from how we have dreams now. Like I dreamt of you ditching us for an audition the other day. In my dream, there were Dan, there was Irina, there was a lot of people. And uh but the people in the past have described in books like the Odyssey or even the Bible, where they would say they're in the barn as I fall asleep. They're in the barn, an angel descended upon me. There were no accounts of hypothetical scenarios. There were no accounts of I dreamt of me being on the plains of stuff, blah blah blah, where and where in the long before time. And then you go further down than that. There exists a time where human beings have proto languages, didn't have any technology, didn't have any writing. Um, is their consciousness the same as ours? Are they still the same human being as we? Right?
I would say yes.
Would
My
you say
initial
yes?
reaction. Yes, yeah.
Right? So you're basically now then concurring to the fact that hey, no matter the efficiency and the capacity of your consciousness, uh you are still you. Doesn't that conflict with the idea that hey, if I swap your body out with a pig that you now experience less? Do you see the conflict, the paradox here?
No, but because it's not me now, because they are still, I would say, like, hold on, maybe I didn't articulate what I mean by when I say yes.
Oh.
I would say while they do not have the same language, knowledge, and understanding of my environment as I do now, I think if our roles were swapped, I would probably
Mm.
live as how they have lived, and if they had my exact experiences, would be probably me, but different me.
The point of the tangent was to ask the question that hey, these let's say these prehistoric humans, uh given their consciousness compared to the modern day humans, if you are a historian, would you mark us down as the same human being, or would you say hey, there's a human modern version versus and then them as human prehistoric? Would you label them as different, or would you consider that human is human? regardless of mental capacity.
I would say that there definitely have been some mutations going on between then and now. Would you agree?
No, there hasn't. We're still the same. Like
Yeah,
two twenty
but can
thousand
you
years ago,
say
same
the
genus.
Homo sapien in the past
Yeah, we're
have the
still
same?
we're still Homo sapiens. When if you're talking about like genetic differences, then that's not Homo sapien. It's Homo erectus. It's Homo something else, right? The ones that we have document change for it.
Okay, maybe let's not go so that far back behind. Let's go to like the Bronze
Mm.
Age,
Yeah.
right? I think we are still similar,
Mm.
but what has then changed is our understanding of the world around us, right?
And on top of that, the amount of
Because then
information we
we
receive,
are
right?
able to, yeah, because we are able to, due to the invention of writing and teaching, we are then able to, instead of resetting the knowledge and picking it up again, we can basically springboard the information forward,
Mm-hmm.
right?
So
So let's say we are still kind of still starting from scratch and still kind of springboarding forward. But if you can say you can, I don't know, download the encyclopedic knowledge of everything we know today, both with its debatable points and conflicting points, and just download all this information into infants
mm,
as soon as their mental capacity is able to carry that load. I would think that them as a person going forward would also be drastically different than who we are today as people, like the standard people, normal
yeah,
humans
there's
as
no doubt about that. But they are but would you define them as the same people? Would you say they are still people, still human?
yeah.
Given the difference in mental capacities, let's just assume that there is a difference in mental capacity, saying that we have evolved, like despite being the same genus, despite being the same species, the modern day humans are, let's say, far better at abstraction, whereas the human beings of days past would have more mental capacity reserved for environmental like how people in the past like remembers the whole forest. They're very
Hold on,
conscious of their environment.
hold on. Just because someone is less smarter than I am doesn't make them any form of subhuman, if that's what you're trying to
I'm not
allude
saying they're
to.
subhuman. I'm trying to see the logic in your understanding because
Yeah,
you've
because
point you've
look,
no, I
the
mean,
the
you've
the
wait. I
person.
mean, you pointed out earlier that a person in a coma, that human in a coma is not the person is no longer that person if he is in a
No,
coma.
but here we go again. You're talking about we have to specify, are we talking about an individual or are we talking about blanket human at the point? Because you're jumping between those terms. You're talking about Bernie, what makes Bernie different? And then now you're talking about blanket humans, what makes humans different, right? And
No, I
I'm
mean,
starting to get a bit agitated because you're jumping between what we are talking about. Human is human. Back then, with our limited understanding of the world, right now, and probably in the future, unless there's a mutation that occurs somewhere along the way, the biological human is still a human being. However, the individual experience of what makes somebody who they are is drastically different.
mhm.
Somebody in China right now is living a complete different reality to somebody who to I who what to the one I am living right now, because we are individuals. And this is what I mean by the chair. The chair is the umbrella term of what a chair as a concept is, but the different specific functions and technicalities of said chair differs depending on what the chair, who made the chair, what the chair is made of, and what is the targeted functionality of the chair. Can it roll better? Can it lean back? Can it rock back and forth? Do you see my issue with what you're trying to do here?
I think I
We are
have
we're
okay,
talking
let me
about
explain this let me
blanket
lay the
umbrella
two
term.
things out. Because yeah, I understand. We started out talking about what makes Benny Benny, and then we went on the tangent of is the same human of today is a human today the same as the mentally, let's just say the mentally different, the capacity is different, or let's say our brains are wired differently to the humans of days past, right? These are the one was the original thing we're talking about, and then there's the tangent about difference in mental capacities and whether that constitutes a change and whether they're the same human beings. And these are analogies. I'm not trying to compare, I'm not trying to say that they're interchangeable with one another, right? Because I'm ultimately alluding to the question of where do you draw the line, right? So, in the same vein, earlier we were talking about is Benny still Benny if he is unconscious, he is in a vegetative state, right? And that is like the far end. You're mentally, your faculties are not working. You're no longer, and then you argue that okay, if that person is in a coma, that stops being Bernard, right?
Then it's just the physical husk of Bernard.
It's a physical husk
But
of Bernard, but it isn't the entirety of Bernard.
yeah,
Yeah. So using the same analogy, right? Going on to the difference in mental capacities of people today versus people before. If we keep going back, at what point, right, do the capacities become so reduced to something comparable to that of a coma that they then stop being human? That was the question.
but I don't think at any point of human evolution did we had such a limited mental capacity that it would be reminiscent of a coma, because then they would just die. They would not be
Mm.
hunting, they would not be active, they would not be moving. They would just be basically bed rotting nonstop, and they would be just be constantly being fed by external sources, which
Hmm.
is unrealistic.
Okay, so you've answered the question, right? If I'm an alien asking you, hey, tracing back human history, the human of modern, the human we have now, you, well, let's say a modern person now in China, and then as an alien, I point out, hey, this is your prehistoric uh, ancestor that's wielding a club that communicates in grunts and is highly effective hunting, right? You would say that that's both human beings. That's both human to this alien.
Yeah.
Good. We've clarified that. Okay. So,
But also to clarify, none of those human would ever had like those none of those prehistoric club wielding human would ever be a Bernie, because none of those humans would ever had the conditions to specifically replicate the Bernie as of this recording,
mhm.
due to the lack of knowledge and due just to the lack of technological access
Now comes the most
to simulate a one-to-one replication.
so comes the most important question where this used to be a popular question for girlfriends to ask their boyfriends. Would you still love me if I was a worm? Right? If this question were asked to you, what's your defense? What would you say?
Would you still be you if you were a worm?
There
Would
we go.
everything that makes you you right now, as
Yeah.
you are, would
If
it still be the same? What as if you were a worm?
exactly. So remember, boys, to clarify the situation, do not be because there was this clip, right? Like the boyfriend was like in a car, and then the girl was like filming, and she was saying, "Would you still love me if I was a worm?" And then
First of all, why are you filming me? If you
okay,
really care, you have ulterior motives by filming. If this is what really about your insecurity, then you wouldn't need to film in the first place. You're trying, there is a targeted reaction that you are going after, and you can say either it's the intentions were nefarious, you want to film a setup to fail, the intention is curious,
mm-hmm.
there is no intention to paint anybody in a bad light, and there is no intention to seek affirmation. You're just curious. as a baseline, which is the healthier version. But still, I would not record it because it's between you and your significant other. You don't need to show it off to the world, because if the fact that you are recording it already means that you are trying to get something out of this. You're trying to get validation out of this interaction by strangers on the internet, whatever. I don't know. I don't care. Depends on the individual.
Is that a red flag in a girlfriend if she's like filming you for reaction?
Yeah, I would say so.
Mm.
Unless you have both already say like, hey, let's film each other for content because we're making a living out of this. But still, it's very performative, and at some point, it sounds super exhausting. And I don't think I want to live in that kind of scenario under those circumstances, because it,
Okay.
it just sounds like it would be exhausting after some point. Because if you're not performing for the world, you're performing to each other. And it's like, if everything is a performance, when can you genuinely just be you?
Okay. I mean, I suppose that is a good way to a word of advice from Bernard
Think about
to
it.
conclude this episode. Next time we will reconvene to continue on the ontology of a woman. What is a woman? So that's going to be contentious because
You're
I have
still using that clickbaity title.
well,
Okay.
I mean, it is going to be a very interesting talk about. I'm not going to name this one, what is a woman? That will be for the next one.
What is a woman part one?
I can
No,
imagine.
but my question is like, why does it has to be what is a woman? Why can't it be what is a man? Or why can't it be the both? What is a woman and what is a man, right? Like, why
Yeah,
does it have to be
that could be.
gender?
I mean, but it's
This
just
is my war against the war on gender, or my war against gender.
actually you can go even further because the topic of what is a woman obviously has to do with the trans right, yeah, and especially contentious is about their role in the Olympics, right? So that's why it matters because we have Olympic Games that split,
Obviously.
that separate the women from the men, and we can further that discussion down into saying, hey, should Olympics be split up based on race as well? Because it seems like the top performers in basketball and running somehow always Africans, and then the best ping pong players somehow always Asians. Why is that? So there's a lot of really interesting science we could delve
I
into.
mean, hold on, think about it. Asians have ping pong as a pastime, right? Sometimes I see these white boys, I mean, these Europeans play ping pong, but I'm not sure if they play it in the same intensity as the Asians do.
Some of them do.
If, do they?
Yeah, it's up to the sport. Like the average Asian doesn't play ping pong,
Fair enough.
but yeah,
So you're saying that there's a biological advantage for Asians to be able to play ping pong
right.
compared to the
So that's the thing. That's the debate, right? I'm putting forward. I'm putting this question forward. I'm not claiming there is, right? I'm not claiming that
Okay.
definitively only black people can run like Usain Bolt, right? I'm not claiming that, but it just seems like the best runners have always been black, right? Um,
Mm.
yeah, it's super interesting. We're gonna talk a lot about the science of measuring performance, VO2, and the chromosomal symptoms, where you have the De La Chapelle syndrome, right? Men can
Yeah.
have XX chromosomes but still be fully functional male, etc. Yeah, so stay tuned for that, and thank you guys for listening. Remember, we have our Patreon down in the link below. We're also on Spotify, and we will see you next time.
Thank you for listening. See you
Thank
next
you.
time.